As Trump's legal team tries to drag its feet in responding to special counsel Jack Smith's request for a protective order, Trump's not-so-veiled threats on social media against those prosecuting him underscore the stakes of our current political moment. And while his most recent threatening post has overt authoritarian signaling, his campaign is doubling down, calling it, quote, the definition of political speech. Joining me now, New York University history professor and the author of Strongmen, From Mussolini to the Present, Ruth Ben Ghiat. Ruth, it's always so nice to spend time with you because you always lend such a perspective for us to really understand how all of this fits, because we kind of get deep in the weeds sometimes on the legal issues, et cetera, but you really give us the context. And so let's start with that post. If you go after me, I'm coming after you. Trump's authoritarian language, it's clear. So how alarmed should we be that this kind of rhetoric is coming from the 2024 Republican frontrunner who has already promised to dismantle any guardrails to presidential power if he manages to get reelected?
Very. We need to take Trump very seriously. I wish people had taken him more seriously in 2016 when he said he could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone. That was a first presidential candidate saying he could shoot someone and he wouldn't lose any followers. He was saying he was going to be loved because he's lawless. And so now we have, years later, we had a coup, of course, a violent coup, and we have the whole system being kind of infected by this poison, where the second most popular candidate, Ron DeSantis, is saying, if when I get in on the first day, we're going to slit some throats. And this is not how Democrat with a small d politicians speak. This is how leaders like Putin and former, head of the Philippines, Duterte, that's how they speak.
And Ruth, what key elements of the authoritarian playbook that you know so well do you see when you've read Trump's indictment in the 2020 election interference case?
Yeah, it's really interesting to frame it that way because you have, first of all, the attention in the first part of the indictment to propaganda. And this is absolutely key, that his skill at spreading lies. And by the way, people are wondering why Trump's lawyer is doing so much media rather than working on his defense. It's because every moment, this is an especially important moment because he's on the defensive more than ever to get that poisonous propaganda out there to the mainstream, quote, media, to those audiences. So propaganda is very key. Then you had the role of the elite enablers. Those are very important to authoritarians, and especially in a coup situation, you always have coups. They happen fast, but they are the product of planning by many people, and we've seen that. And then we have the recourse to violence, and we see, Trump wanted to use the Insurrection Act to bring out the military, but he actually had his civilian army. That's the new playbook, and it was used by Bolsonaro as well. If you can't get the military, you have your own civilian army of thugs to do your work.
Ruth, you've talked about the use of others to enable an authoritarian like Donald Trump. How important, then, is it to ensure that the ringleader, the boss, as he's called sometimes, is held just as accountable as much as the head bashers in the coup and the ones in the suits?
It's absolutely key. And somebody with a personality cult as robust as Trump. And this is why the presidential race, it's such a strange race. Nobody can emerge because there's a leader cult there. And so, history shows if you don't hold that leader to account, then all of the enablers and the next Trumps waiting in the wings, they feel that they can get away with it too. And the rule of law is not validated.
Ruth, you and I had the privilege of speaking, I guess, maybe a week ago, and you said Trump was a competent authoritarian. I chuckled a little bit at the adjective competent, not because I disagree with you, but I'm kind of stuck in this weird place. I think Trump could be crazy like a fox. I don't want to underestimate his intelligence, but he is prone to bumbling. He's prone to screwing up, but I don't think January 6th was a screw up. In fact, I think that we just by the skin of our teeth saved the republic because of some people that said, you know what, we're going to be stalwart and we're going to try to protect what's left of our democracy at the hands of Donald Trump. What do you say to people then, Ruth, that think that perhaps we're being hyperbolic when we have these conversations about authoritarians when you compare Donald Trump to people like Putin?
Yeah, it's such an interesting issue. And I can say that in history, people didn't take many of these fascists and authoritarians seriously. You know, Germans thought that Hitler was a ranting, you know, the joke was that he looked like a waiter and he was a ranting fool. Mussolini was just full of bluster. And so it's very easy not to take them seriously because they are loose cannons. Duterte was the same. He said all kinds of, you know, crazy things, and Bolsonaro and Berlusconi. They all do this, and then by the time you realize how organized they actually are at the things they care about, it's too late.
I'll just note as I'm saying goodbye to you that Bolsonaro left Brazil and comes to where? Florida. The land of Ron DeSantis. No coincidences there, I don't think. Ruth Ben Ghiat, as always, it's a privilege to have you with us. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.